When I was little, I had older parents and they were somewhat technophobic. So long before I ever laid hands on a game controller, I used to just sit and read video game magazines, look at the little screenshots, read the words, and just imagine how good these things were going to be when I finally got to play one. So weirdly, my first video game memories are not of actually playing them. They're of reading about Nintendo games in magazines in the supermarket.
This is the Culture Study Podcast, and I'm Anne Helen Peterson.
And I am Keza MacDonald. I'm the video games editor at The Guardian and the author of a new book about Nintendo called Super Nintendo: How One Japanese Company Unlocked the Power of Play.
Can you remember, which games seemed most vivid in your mind that you read about in the supermarket checkout line?
It was always Nintendo's games. So Mario and Zelda. When I was growing up, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System had basically just come out, I think.
Yeah.
By the time I was this age. This is when I was about 6 or 7 years old. So it hadn't been out for very long. And it was slightly before the PlayStation became the biggest thing in the world. So all of the pictures that I was sort of imagining these games from, there were these beautiful pixel art, really colorful. Yeah. They looked like the fantasy worlds that I had, like the fantasy novels I read all the time as a little kid. They looked like that, but in a game, like interactive. So it was, and The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, I remember that was the first game that really caught my eye properly. And then I didn't get it when I finally got a games console. I didn't get it for ages, like months afterwards, because it was so expensive. When I finally got to play it, it felt like this like fabled myth that had been handed down through generations, even though it had probably been about 6 months.
I hate being like, back in my day, the games were like this, but I do think that there is something really interesting about like the way that I started playing. You would I had a Nintendo, just an old school Nintendo, but then also you would like rent games just for the weekend. And like
from Blockbuster.
Yes, like what a different experience to only have your hands on a game for a short period of time and then maybe return to it the next weekend or like a month later and try to conquer it. Whereas now it's just like everyone has everything all the time almost.
Yeah, and that experience of like trying to pick a game you could probably finish in a weekend.
Totally.
My brother and I would be down looking at all the shelves being like, right, well, that's a huge role-playing game. We're not getting anywhere with that.
Yeah.
But let's try and pick something else. But we played some real stinkers from Blockbuster. Some really bad games.
And I'm sure this is the case now, but like just there's so many esoteric games that you'll like think that you're bringing up something that like is a point of familiarity for everyone your age. And they're like, I've never heard of that game in my life.
What are you talking about? Yes, that happens to me all the time, unsurprisingly, perhaps, given that I'm a games journalist. But I'll be like, hey, does anyone remember that game on the DS where you made singing jellyfish? And they're like, people are like, what are you talking about? Like, electroplankton. It was called electroplankton. Does nobody else remember this?
My version of this is the game California Games. If anyone has heard of that, please come into the comments. But also even like what I think of as standards, like Bubble Bobble. If you're maybe just 2 years too old or young, like those are not seminal for you. So.
Oh, yeah, because games were changing so fast as well in the 90s and early 2000s. So you'd play something and then a year later it'd be completely obsolete, which it's not like that these days. You can play a game from 10 years ago now and it still looks pretty good and it's still relevant.
So we are so excited here at Culture Study about your new book, Super Nintendo. So excited that we're doing like an actual Q&A with you in the newsletter about it. But for those people who are not reading every issue of the newsletter, can you tell us a little bit about the book and how it came to be?
So the book is called Super Nintendo: The Game-Changing Company That Unlocked the Power of Play. And it is a cultural history book about the Japanese games company that is the longest-running video game company that we have. The company that made Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and many, many, many other games that are very foundational to a lot of people's understanding of games. So the reason I wanted to write about Nintendo was because it was my own route into video games. It was my first games console. It was the games I fell in love with when I was a child. And now I'm 37 and I'm a games journalist for a living and have been for 20 years. So it's a very important company to me. Mm-hmm. But also for many, many millions of other people, Nintendo is also their route into games. Okay. And I think if you want to understand human beings, you need to understand play, because we're a species that plays into adulthood. Very few creatures do that. and we need to kind of keep room for fun and for play in our lives. And if you want to understand play, then video games are a really important thing to understand, because it's kind of the modern world's fastest routes into play. And then Nintendo itself is a really good way to understand video games, what they're about, why people love them, how they're made. If you get Nintendo, then you probably get video games as a whole, and you'll understand this, like, what makes games so magic for the people who love them.
This is what I so appreciated about the book, was this core of like, how do you make play, like how do you make it vivid? Not just how do you make it addictive, it's more like how do you make something how do you make a game joyful? How do you make it something that makes you actually feel good and not like kind of like icky and exhausted when you've experienced it? Do you know what I mean?
That's so right. And like the idea of play being an intentional thing that we do, it's not just wasting time. It's not just filling our time. It's like, how do we play in a way that's enriching, in a way that kind of feeds our brains and is creative? And, if I'm sitting there scrolling Instagram, as we all do sometimes for 40 minutes, then I will feel bad after. I'll be like, oh, I didn't really choose to do that. I just kind of got captured by that algorithm. Whereas like a good video game, that's fun that I'm having. That's a choice that I'm making to engage with it. I don't feel like captured by it. I think big tech has kind of colonized the idea of play, right? It's all, come back every day for your bonus gems on your mobile game or whatever. And that's that's not for me what games are about. It's about this intentional choosing of a fun time. And good game design for me is like, how do we feed your brain? How do we like feed your that need for fun that you have, the child inside all of us? Like, you want to activate that with video games that are good. And that's why they're great when they are great.
This is such a great segue into the theme of the episode, which is about women and non-binary people who get into gaming maybe later in life. And I was so struck by how many questions we received that really talked about, like, how do I not feel bad?
Right.
Especially as a woman, as someone who is like socialized as a woman, for playing games. Like, I knew that we would probably address this in some way, but the fact that we got, I think, like a dozen questions that were specifically trying to hone in on this question of like, I feel bad, or I think badly of my husband, but I still want to play. Like, all of these things that are reproducing these norms about essentially women shouldn't play.
Exactly. And that goes really deep. It's because that doesn't just women also shouldn't do sports for fun. Women shouldn't do reading for fun. It has to be reading for self-enrichment in some way.
Right. Sports have to be for exercise and regimenting the body. Like, it can't be for play.
100%. You can't just eat for fun. It has to be, some kind of insane nutritional thing that's doing the absolute optimal thing for your menopausal bone health or whatever. It's just everything has to be kind of put through this lens of like productivity of some kind. And things are marketed and branded to women as like, this is something that will improve you or that will help you to be better at being a woman. Do you know what I mean? And games aren't like that. Games are they're just fun. And I honestly have met so many women and girls who played a lot as kids, maybe played a lot of games as kids, and then suddenly felt like they weren't allowed to anymore at some point, maybe in adolescence or maybe college kind of age, and then just never really played them again, but still have like a real fantastically fond memories of play. And then they come back to games sometimes much later in life and rediscover it. And it's I see that really very often. It's surprising how often there's like this big gap.
I think so much of the conversation has been about like how it's really difficult to be a woman in gaming, right? Like in the larger, like, discursive sphere, online sphere of gaming, and how there's a lot of toxic masculinity and like shaming and trolling and attack and like everything to do with Gamergate and all of that, right? Like, that's so real. Yeah. But then I think, and this is something that I'm so excited to unpack in this episode, there is a lot of self-imposed understanding of like who is allowed to game or to take time to game.
Absolutely. And it does come from both sides as well. Because the reason we read about video gaming being difficult for women is because it has been. I've lived this. I've been a gamer since I was 6, and a professional like games journalist since I was 16. And over that time, I have had some pretty bad experiences of misogyny in the games industry in lots of different ways. But I also, almost out of sheer stubbornness, I was a bit like, no, I belong. I belong here. And if you don't think so, I will simply stay. I will just out of sheer obstinacy, I will become a veteran of this space. But yeah, it doesn't come from nowhere, this perception of games as being unwelcoming to women. Yeah. But I do genuinely believe it's an awful lot better now than it ever has been. Gaming communities are a lot more broad and more diverse. And also, like, everyone kind of plays games now. Like, millennials, we're all grown up, we're all pushing pushing 40 or we're already there. And
Mm-hmm.
like, we play games, we understand them really well, and there's no longer this like it's just teen boys. Like teen boys are now actually not even the largest subsection of gamers by a long shot. So
So
that's
great.
nice. It's helping, yeah. And also, a lot of the people who make games are women now. Like
Yeah.
when I was a teenager, got my first jobs on gaming magazines. There was maybe one other woman in the building,
Wow.
wherever I was, like one, and there were maybe three or four others in the country.
Yeah.
And now it's much more like 50-50 or 60-40 in the games media as to, gender representation. And players too, it's more like
Yeah.
50-50.
Yeah.
Certain genres are more male dominated, but gaming in general, it's just a lot better than it has been.
Okay, so our first question is going to get into some of these stereotypes that aren't necessarily true of gamers. It comes from Teresa, and Melody's going to read it.
Most of my elder millennial and millennial girlfriends don't want to date men who are avid gamers because of what else it says about their lives, regressing into perpetual childhood, anesthetizing themselves instead of learning or creating, let alone choosing to game over cleaning the house or developing a social life together with their partner. How do the negative gendered components of gaming inform more women getting into gaming life?
Oh, wow. There's so much in this question.
Did
And
one of my ex-girlfriends write this? I feel like I do
I
feel there can be a
feel,
perception, can't there, of gaming being very infantile.
I wonder if we could, like, this is connected to long-standing perceptions about what gaming does to people, like especially like even the word anesthetizing, right? Like very specific moral panic that has accompanied games from the 80s to today. So, can you talk a little bit about where you think these stereotypes, like how these stereotypes developed, and we can start there?
Interestingly, in the 1980s, a lot of women played games, like computer, and made games too. Like some of the very successful games from the 80s and 90s were written and made by women.
Yeah.
But then something happened in the early 90s where companies like Sega and PlayStation decided to market very, very strongly at young men, like so strongly at
Yeah.
young men. If
Yeah.
you look at like print ads from like the magazines of the time and the newspapers, it's like literally you'll ignore your girlfriend for the new Game Boy. It's really very targeted. Lara Croft in Tomb Raider,
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
all
Yeah. Yeah.
remember how she was
Yeah.
pitched. I mean, she's become a very unlikely feminist hero because we simply had no one else. But at the time, she was pitched as like, very much for the male gaze. So that sort of tied into this idea of gaming as being an infantile thing for boys. And another thing that has happened is that games used to be something that people played together sitting on the couch. And then when the internet took
Yep.
off,
Right.
now when we are socially gaming, we're playing with our friends, but we're doing it alone in front of us. It looks like we're alone, but even though we might
Yes.
be having, a wonderfully social time, it looks like you're sitting there with a headset on, isolating yourself from the world. Even if what you're doing in that moment is connecting and spending
Yep.
time with your friends. A
Yep.
lot of guys, and I do this too, but a lot of guys like to, their friendships, they like to do something together rather than necessarily like get together
Yeah.
and just have a chat. They like to do stuff
Yes.
together. And gaming is one of those things where you get your buddies together for a squad in Call of Duty, and maybe it's easy to have a chat while you're, also fighting a bunch of other dudes on
Side
a
by
map.
side activities. This is something I was actually interviewing someone about male friendship, and they were talking about how like dudes just love to do things side by side, not looking at one another.
That's absolutely it. And like, so games can be a version of that. And so if it looks like, a guy is not developing a social circles at all, or like isolating himself with the game, that may not actually be the case at all. Another thing that kind of jumped out at me there was this idea of like, not creating or learning. Games can involve an awful lot of creating and learning. It depends on the game, but they definitely can. But yeah, so these stereotypes from, I would say, kind of the mid late 90s, really, they've been astonishingly persistent. And I still to this day, as a woman in her late 30s, now get asked like, really, girls play these games now? Still now. So it's understandable that there is this disconnect. I will say also, like, it doesn't really matter what it is that someone is doing. If they're ignoring you, you're going to hate whatever that is, whether it's watching football all day or whether it's playing games or whatever it is. Like, if someone's just a bad partner and is going to just ignore you in favor of whatever hobby or other distracting thing is there, then that's, that's understandable that would create resentment.
Some of the best couple relationships that I know of are people who actually play games together. Like it's just such an incredible bonding experience for them. But
Yeah.
I love pinpointing this moment in the 90s, because I certainly experienced this. And I think, the question asker says elder millennial and millennial girlfriends.
Exactly this, yeah.
My ideas about who played games were so strongly formed in my teens and early 20s. And this is when, as you pointed out, Sega was making this turn. Like, I'm even thinking about the masculinized fonts. Like,
Yes.
the way that Sega appeared on the screen, the color of the game console, like everything. And also just the popularity of Mortal Kombat,
Very
Grand Theft
violent games,
Auto,
yeah.
right? All of these incredibly masculinized games. Like, to me, that all screamed like, these games aren't for you. And then they would play them together. And I was like, I don't want to play that game with you. Like, I'll play Bubble
Right.
Bobble with you, but I don't like I have no interest in taking up that subjectivity myself.
Yeah. I do feel like the nadir of this was in about 2005. That was the point at which it was that, ironically,
Yeah.
the year I joined like the video games industry, but about that kind of time when it was like every single game had a identical, like shaven headed white man with a
Yes.
gun. Every
Yes.
single one. There's an amazing grid of them that you can find. There's like a meme which is just a grid of 12, like 12 games that came out in 2005 to 2008 with identical male protagonists. There was a point where only 2% of games had a female protagonist in the mid 2000s, which is wild.
Wild.
Absolutely wild. And now it's more like, 30%, which is just getting somewhere. But,
Right.
there was a point where a video game character was more likely to be a cartoon animal than a woman, which really says a lot.
I have a friend from college who, when they played Mario Kart, he would play the princess. And because he played the princess, they nicknamed him Box, which is like a pejorative word for vagina. Like, and that
is so
still
sad.
is still his nickname is Box.
Oh, no. That's so
Right?
sad.
Because he played the princess, the one female game like character
Yeah.
that you could choose. But I do think like the contrast with Nintendo is kind of interesting to me, especially like just in terms of like stereotypical gendering. One of the things I love too about the book is how you trace the evolution of Zelda. So what was happening with Zelda at that moment?
Zelda is 40 years old
Yeah.
this year. Zelda, so like,
It's crazy.
I know it's wild, right? So it stars a little kid basically, and this is Link. The star of Zelda is actually not Zelda. Zelda's the princess. The star is this wee guy Link in the little green hat. And he was a little kid, or kind of an adolescent in most of the Zelda games, and the principle of the Zelda games up until kind of the late 90s was rescue the princess, right?
Yeah.
It was his quest was always Zelda would need, he'd have to save the world via saving Princess Zelda. That was generally the vibe. And it's very interesting as the games got more sophisticated. Two things happened. Firstly, Link got he got a very like androgynous vibe. In the 2000s, he became more of a kind of quite gender neutral character. I found him very appealing as a kind of gender questioning teenager because he was such a, he was a boy, but not really, he was kind of somewhere in between, with his big floppy blonde fringe that I don't at all have any resemblance to. And, so I always found Linked, and he's a character that you can kind of see as genderless or as either gender, depending on how you connect. And as a result, Zelda has a really big female fan base, partly because of this. But then Zelda herself, the princess, she starts to take a more active role in the games in the mid 2000s. And she starts to star in the games alongside Link. And then finally, last year, there was a Zelda game that actually you play as Zelda rather than Link. So she kind of she mirrors the trajectory of female game characters in general in the whole rest of the games industry, and that she went from object to co-star to now star as well, or just exclusive star. And that is a very interesting mirror of how female game characters have gone.
I love that. I do think, like, going back to this question from Teresa, I do wonder how much, like, I talked about how I define myself against that, like, as a teenager. And I think that people now, like, they're like, I don't want that in a partner. And as you point out, really what you don't want is someone who, like, ignores you all the time. And
Well, what you
like,
don't want is a 15-year-old boy. Like, no, nobody wants that in a partner, someone who behaves like a teenager.
And they're mapping that understanding of someone. Like, if you're looking at someone's online dating profile and you see that, maybe what you're actually seeing is 15-year-old boy, because that's your understanding of, like, how those boys behave.
And like some people, and some guys, some people do have a problematic relationship with gaming, right? But in the same way as everybody can have a problematic relationship with pretty much anything. But one thing I will say from the perspective of a lifelong gamer boy, like with an eye, is that like gamers are very playful people that can actually bring quite a lot. It can actually be a plus, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I love like even talking to the kids in my life about the games that they're playing. Like if you actually listen, it's actually very interesting. Like you just have to listen instead of letting it gloss over. Like sometimes I let it just like go over me like a waterfall while they're telling me all of this, downloading all of this information about all of these characters that they're playing. But if I actually like listen and watch them play, like it becomes, they're trying to tell you something about what they find interesting. So,
Exactly, yeah. And if you listen to what it is that activates someone about a
yeah.
game, if you listen to what that is, then you learn something about them, definitely. In the same way as someone's favorite album and favorite book will tell you a lot about who they are.
The Culture Study podcast is sponsored by Ollie. 91% of dog parents say their pup is an important member of the family. Melody, can you share an obsessive thing that you have done for your dog to show how much you love your dog?
I could tell you so many. I have definitely paid hundreds of dollars for a boutique photo shoot for her birthday. I have gotten like picture day pictures at daycare. Also, she gets to go to daycare sometimes.
Yeah.
I have a t-shirt with her face on it, and I do wear it in public. I could go on.
If anyone gets being dog obsessed, it's Ollie. They're relentless about delivering the best food and experience for you and your dog. This is why Polly loves Ollie. And they give you a way to check in on their health over and over and over again. Here's what sets Ollie apart. Ollie's fresh recipes are developed by real chefs and backed by vet nutritionists. They're obsessed with making the best meals with the highest quality ingredients. From the moment you start your subscription, everything is tailored to your dog. The meals are perfectly portioned, and you get a puptainer with a scoop. I love this thing for easy storing and serving. So you don't have to deal with like the gross cans in the fridge, which are my mortal enemy. With Ollie, you don't just get food. Through their app, you can actually check in on your dog's health with real vets. You just upload their picture and their team can check in with your dog's weight, digestion, teeth, and coat. They are obsessed with making sure your pup is as healthy as can be. So get ready for both you and your pup to be obsessed. Bev loves it. Steve loves it. Polly loves it. Every dog that I have known that I have given this food to as a special treat when they come to our house, love it. Head to ollie.com/culture. Tell them all about your dog and use code CULTURE to get 60% off your welcome kit when you subscribe today. Plus, they offer an obsession guarantee. If you and your dog are not completely obsessed, you'll get your money back. That's OLLIE.com/culture and enter code CULTURE to get 60% off your first box. Ollie, feed the obsession. Today's episode is sponsored by Honeylove.
And I have a question for you.
Okay.
Do you have indoor bras and outside bras? Like bras you only wear at home and they never go out in public?
Yeah, like, but mostly they're like sports bras. Like I'm like lounging around or something like that. Do
Yes.
you? Do you, Melody?
Oh, yes. I have bras that I can't really, I mean, I could wear into public, but I do care about what people think when they look at me. But my Honeylove bra, remember like the magazines used to talk about going from day to night?
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Honeylove bra is going from inside to outside because it is so comfortable and yet it still looks respectable when you leave the house.
Honeylove, hire Melody to write your copy. The crossover bra is the most comfortable inside to outside bra that you've ever worn. There's no underwire, but it still magically lifts and supports. It doesn't dig, it doesn't pinch, you don't get red lines or these pressure points. It's the only bra that you don't rip off right when you go inside. It's also available from 30A to 44G, so it's supportive for smaller busts without slipping or constant adjusting, and equally reliable lifting and comfortable for fuller sizes. Honeylove is now offering a crossover triple bra bundle. This is key. Like sometimes you really do. You just need a whole refresh. You can get a huge savings by buying 3 at once. Honeylove is an independent female-founded brand with products designed by women who actually wear them. And Honeylove doesn't just make bras. They also have a full line of tanks. I love a supportive tank. Also bodysuits and underwear, if that's what you're looking for. Treat yourself to the most advanced bras and shapewear on the market. Use our exclusive link to save 20% off Honeylove at honeylove.com/culture. That's honeylove.com/culture. After you check out, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Experience the new standard in comfort and support with Honeylove. Okay, next question. This is about cozy gaming, and it comes from Hannah.
How do you think the rise of cozy gaming on social media platforms has influenced women and non-binary folks to try gaming? Is it the lack of the toxic masculinity, real and or perceived, in this cozy subgenre that breaks the initial barrier, or could it be something else?
Okay, so first, for people who are not cozy gamers, what is a cozy game like?
Cozy games are games that prioritize connection and building things. So they're non-violent. There's never violence, or very rarely anything approaching violence. They tend to be about building either a community or building buildings or like making a town, something like that. They're very sedate. They're paced. They're very low stakes. There's not threat. There's not violence. There's not failure. So they're a very different kind of. They're a very different feel to like Grand Theft Auto or something like that, or Mario, where you're trying to complete a challenge. Like cozy games is not generally try to complete this challenge. It's just exist in this world and have this experience.
Right. And like, how do you feel about this idea that it's an attempt to woo people who aren't men into the gaming world? Was this accidental? Like, how do you trace the development of these games? Because to me, it sounds like SimCity.
Yeah, like SimCity is a cozy game, actually. You know, I think there are a lot of kind of older computer games that were about sort of building a civilization in some way. I mean, the game Civilization has a lot of war in it, but there were a lot of other games like SimCity, like The Sims. The Sims was the first kind of real inflection point of the cozy game, because it was a game about like helping people through life, and there wasn't like traditional gaming stuff like levels to complete and bosses to beat and all that.
Yeah.
And then Animal Crossing, which a lot of people will be familiar with, is another very important cozy game. It's about just move to a new town, and then you like collect furniture and water flowers and chill out on the beach and just have a nice time. And it's become a really, really big genre in the last kind of 5 and 10 years.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that is that there was this massive untapped market of like people who just weren't interested in like violence or competition in games, and that was a market that nobody was really looking at in the 90s. And game developers are always looking for new ways to new types of fun. There's actually a really interesting game design philosophy called tend and befriend, which is like it's a different like fight or flight. Most games work on fight or flight, right? You're either running from something or you're in combat of some kind. Tend and befriend is a different gaming experience where it's that the point of the game is like it's almost like oxytocin based. It's a different brain chemical that you get rather than just constant dopamine. It's a very, very popular genre, and it does a lot of different people play cozy games, but it is got more women than men play cozy games. And I think that games that embrace, also another example of this is narrative games. So games that the primary objective is to experience a story. Those also attract different people from, your traditional shoot the aliens kind of situation.
I always like, at least with the early narrative games, I was like, stop telling me the story. Because it was always like a guy like speaking in low tones about like whatever the story was. And I know the stories are much better at like, and you'd have to like hear it
soldier.
again. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I do like, tend and befriend. It does strike me as like tapping into these like traditionally socialized feminine characteristics of like, even though there are low stakes, you're still trying to like be productive almost in your game. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, like I have seen like there's this stereotype that isn't true, that women are more casual gamers, right? Like women they'll have a little go, but they're not that into it. I have seen women absolutely rinse Animal Crossing for all it's worth for 400 hours. Like I have seen women just get right in there in The Sims and create entire like parallel universes and apply all of their intelligence and commitment to these games in the same way as like anyone would. And like the effort that goes in and the enjoyment that comes out, it's just a different kind of flavor of it, I think. But yeah, I think maybe it is true that because there's this element of like you make something or you create something or you manage and run something, perhaps that feels like a more acceptable version of fun, like a sanctioned fun.
No, like I should have taken cues from my obsession with SimCity that like I love like creating systems and infrastructure and like looking at like analytics and all that sort of thing. Melody,
Roller Coaster Tycoon's another one for that.
Melody, you got really into Stardew Valley during the pandemic?
Yeah, I started with Animal Crossing, and
You
then
started with
after I was just trying to look up my stats. I'm almost positive I have 1,200 hours on Animal Crossing. That was
Sick.
in basically like
That's hardcore,
played
like-
every day for 2 years. And then it kind of got to the point where there was nothing I could do anymore. And then I played Stardew Valley, and then I almost completed it. I have a 99% completion. I'm short like one craft, and then I was just like, I can't do this anymore. But that was like another full year at least.
What did you love about it?
The tend and befriend. I
Yeah.
mean, because I never played video games before the pandemic, and then I saw people posting screenshots from Animal Crossing, and I was like, this looks so cute, and if I don't get this, I will die. And it was impossible to get a Switch, so there was like a whole adventure just even getting the console. But then it just became like, it became my primary hobby of playing that because I could play with my sister. We could visit each other's islands.
Yeah.
And then we also joined this Facebook group where we could go visit strangers' islands to like collect furniture that wasn't available on our islands and catch falling stars. And so it was a stand-in for community in a time when we couldn't do that.
Yeah, 100%. Like that experience is also one I've heard a lot. Like a lot of people discovered games with Animal Crossing during the pandemic because we couldn't hang out anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And it was such a lovely, cute, adorable place to be.
Yeah. But the thing I loved about Stardew Valley too was there's a story there that you're progressing. And so it takes place like over seasons, over years. And so yes, you're tending and befriending, but you're also working out a story.
Yeah. Okay, next question. This is a similar question, but I think we're trying to hone in more on some of these like ingrained ideas. This comes from Kristen.
I've been in love with gaming since my dad brought home an Atari 800 XL computer when I was 5. I also never personally met any female gamers my age or older who were part of the same conservative high-demand religion I recently left. Is there any data on the correlation between women who game and those whose beliefs stress more traditional gender roles? Related, I'm also a member of a retro gamers club, and a significant portion of the women in the group happen to be bisexual or lesbian. Could it be that video gaming, largely being considered a male interest, meant that women who have been gaming for decades are more likely to be gender non-conforming in other ways?
Such an interesting question, right? Oh, I love it.
It's really, you know, there's actually quite a lot of data about this. So in the UK, people who are game developers or work in the games industry, 23% of them identify as LGBTQ.
Wow.
Which is almost 10 times what the kind of general population, like census data, would say.
Yeah.
And kind of twice what conventional wisdom would say. So it's a high proportion. Now, I have a theory about this, which is that for millennials, gaming kind of attracts misfits of like various stripes. Like, you know, because if you played games in the 90s, then you were probably called a nerd. It was probably like, in some way you were a misfit. And I think a lot of queer people have that experience as well. I'm a bisexual woman, and I grew up like, you know, getting picked on for being gay all the time, and like gaming was like a space where that didn't happen for me. It was also a place where you could experiment with like your presentation and all sorts of stuff like that. So gaming was like a really important thing for me growing up queer, and then I hear that a lot from a lot of other people too. And then I think also if you grew up being a bit nerdy and maybe being picked on, then you're kind of used to just sort of forging you're not worried about what people think of you, or like, oh, I shouldn't do this because people don't expect that of me, because you already have to question yourself, and you already have to like establish like who you are, think about it a lot more at a younger age. And so I do think there is a high correlation between people who like really love games and people who are queer or women who are gender non-conforming. It's a really interesting piece of data that I've noticed.
Yeah, that point about like how no one else in her conservative high demand religion were also gaming. I just like, I'm thinking about the people that I know who are still in or grew up in those sorts of religions. And like, of course there wouldn't be any time for gaming. Like, you're too busy doing all of the incredible demands of performing femininity and domesticity in the home.
Mm-hmm.
But
that doesn't fit into like play, does it?
No,
there's
not
no
at
room
all.
for play there, especially if that's a boy thing. These are probably the same people who would have got criticized for playing with boy toys like trains instead of dolls. You know, it's the same kind of situation.
Right. And like, maybe you can go play basketball for your high school team, but like not after that. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's
and there are, you know, there are in many cultures, of course, very strictly enforced gender norms about what's acceptable play for boys and girls, even at like age 3.
Yes.
There's a great experiment where the researchers put little babies, like little 1.5-year-old babies, in dresses or not, but like not corresponding to their gender, and like the way that then the adults in the room would then the toys that they would offer, the things that they would be given to play with would differ simply depending on whether the little baby had a dress on or not. So it's really deeply ingrained, this idea of like what's gender appropriate play and what isn't.
And I see this actually in like iPad games that kids start playing when they're younger, and how they like so many more boys that I know get like onto like the Minecraft route, right? Like socialized into that route in part because their other friends are playing and that sort of thing. And then like the girls that I've observed, they get bored with their iPads in part because like the games that are targeted at them are like, put the lipstick on the dolly. They're like, this is boring.
Really lame. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
boring and lame. Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, Barbie Horse Adventures absolutely slapped. Like when it was a really, really good game that was aimed at girls. There's a lot of girls there were these like girly games that, I remember actually when I was about 14, there was this like on the surface extremely sexist game called Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball that came out on the Xbox, and it was a lot of like really, really like big boob bikini girls hanging out on an island playing volleyball, and like the point of the game was sort of to just look at them, really.
Yeah.
And I remember inviting my friends around to play this because I was at that point I was like writing online for games websites and stuff. So I invited my friends around like to laugh at this game. And then I went away for half an hour. I came back. All my friends were busy like picking out the correct clothes. I didn't care about fashion. They really did. They're like busy. They're like dressing all these girls up in the clothes. They're like, oh no, those shoes are actually better. And then they'd like have them play the volleyball. And they're like, yeah, do you know, I don't think that's very practical as an outfit. Like, but they really enjoyed the game. Actually, they really enjoyed like the bits of it that had gone completely over my head. I thought it was so funny. So it's secretly a really good game for teenage girls.
The other thing I'm thinking about too is like when you are playing in a more social atmosphere, as much as it pisses me off, like the dynamics that were true when I was 13 still often reproduce themselves, as in like the guys play and the girls watch.
Yeah, that happens a lot. And there's actually nothing inherently wrong with that.
No.
But there needs to be an opportunity. If you want to play, you should be able to, right?
Yeah.
And like certainly when I remember being, so I made a point out when I was an adolescent, I made a point out of just becoming extremely good at games so that I could beat boys at them. And that was kind of my way of sort of asserting myself. But like, you shouldn't have to do that. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to just get incredibly good at Halo in order to have a place at the table. You should just be able to play. So like the opportunity to play is the most important thing.
It's such a specific, like, I think of you as like your age as like prime millennial, like a specific prime millennial like moment is getting like really good at Halo. So
really good at Halo with that pistol. 3 shots to the head, anybody was done with that. Death matches. I got really good at it.
The Culture City podcast is sponsored by OneSkin. Okay, so every morning, it depends on whether it's a shower morning or not a shower morning. Today is not a shower morning. I go on my walk, I come back, I brush my teeth, and I take my OneSkin overall face, like just general moisturizing lotion. And I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh, I look like an awake person now. That's what I like about it. It makes me look like an awake person who's ready to face their day. I love how OneSkin is just very basic. There's no smells. There's nothing that makes you feel like, oh, like this is so fancy. Am I using it right? And these products are also fantastic if you're a person who has been trying to just start taking care of your skin a little bit more and you don't know where to start. The distinctive thing about OneSkin is it has a patented OS01 peptide. This is the first ingredient proven to target senescent cells, a key driver of wrinkles, fine lines, and loss of elasticity. Even if you don't care about any of that stuff, what it does is it makes your face feel like it's actually moisturized. It just feels good. It's also certified safe for sensitive skin, and their products are free from over 1,500 harsh or irritating ingredients. They're dermatologist tested and have been awarded the National Eczema Association Seal of Acceptance. All of OneSkin's products are designed to layer seamlessly or replace multiple steps in your routine. I always put my tinted SPF on top of it. It's a great base layer for that. Makes skin health easier and smarter at every age. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target the visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code CULTURE at oneskin.co/culture. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code CULTURE. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Our next two questions are about how we think about the time that we devote to play. We're going to do them back to back. The first question comes from Meg.
I recently, in my mid-30s, got back into gaming, if you can call The Sims Kid Pix and Roller Coaster Tycoon gaming. And it is so hard to figure out how much time is okay to devote to this new hobby. I'm particularly weak to the design elements of just one more try that video games are so good at. I think especially because I don't have practice with them. How do I figure out reasonable time bounds for myself that don't just use diet culture shame to keep me from enjoying this very fun time?
And the second question is from Tara.
I'm 29 years old and started playing my first video game, Stardew Valley, 3 months ago. It's the first time that I've experienced what I feel is true time blindness. Is this a bad thing for me? Is it a good thing for me? Is the thought that it could be a bad thing just my worldview that says this kind of time loss is a loss of productivity?
Well, first of all, congratulations, Tara. Time blindness is beautiful.
Welcome. That's all I'll say there.
And like I experience time blindness with reading all the time. And I think that people, if it's a literary book, then it's good. Like if it's a romance and you have time blindness and you stay up too late, people are like, that's bad, right? So what do these two questions together make you think about in terms of like productivity, play, all of those things?
There's two things here. Like we've already talked about this idea of like allowing yourself time for leisure and for fun.
Yeah.
But then there's also this idea of like high versus low culture. Like if you, again, if you lose time, in a literary novel, that feels different from losing time, on a game. And I think there's this element of like almost feeling guilty for enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
Which comes in a lot. However, games can be, because they're, the game designer's job is to make things that are very compelling and very fun. So there's always a kind of element of choice, right? My personal rubric for this, because I am really bad for getting sucked into games and spending way too much time on them when it's like I'm not even enjoying myself anymore. I'm just like I just want to beat it.
Right.
So like,
right.
But I remember to ask myself kind of every kind of 15, 20, half an hour or so, I'll just ask myself, am I still having fun? Am I choosing to do this? Or is this something that I'm now doing out of a compulsion? And like that's something I apply to lots of things, including my phone, lots of other things too. But with games, I find I'm getting something out of it. Like the question to ask yourself is like, am I enjoying myself? Am I getting something out of this?
Right.
It doesn't have to be, am I being productive? But am I getting something enriching out of this experience or not?
Yeah. No, and I think that really points to the part of Meg's question where she's like, I don't like the just one more try, like feeling like, I've been suckered into this, right? But like if you're having a ton of fun, it's like kids asking, can I stay up 15 more minutes? Because they're having so much more, much fun.
It's time well spent, isn't it? And that's the question to ask. I just read a book called The Score by a philosopher called T. Nguyen. And it's about how sometimes you can get so obsessed with the metric of something that it actually you start doing things for the wrong reasons.
Right.
Like an example of that is like Fitbit. If Fitbit's constantly tracking your exercise and your heart rate and all this, then you're not really exercising to feel good, or you're not exercising for fun. You're exercising to fill the number up. You're exercising to meet the metric that's been assigned to you.
Yep.
And it can be the same with games, and social media does this too. Like, are you putting that post up on Instagram because you're sharing something you want to share? Or are you doing it because you want likes? Are you trying to game the system?
Right.
And so the question is always, is this the game I want to be playing? I've like adopted this as a thing like in my life. So is this the game I want to be playing right now? Just asking yourself that, it stops you from having these feelings of like, I've been captured by this.
Right. And trying to avoid like, is it bad that I'm doing this? Is it good?
No.
Like there's no moral balance.
Permission. Here's some permission. Like just have permission to play Stardew Valley as much as you like, as long as you're going to work or like,
Yeah.
just speaking to your friends.
And I have actually seen a lot of people our age who are trying to think about this with their leisure or with their work, whatever it is. So you mentioned the Fitbit example, but I see this too with people thinking about like tracking their books, right? Like people who get obsessive about it. And then they start like only reading short books because they don't want to mess with like their pace essentially. And now, like this year, I'm seeing lots of people who are like, I'm only reading super huge books so that I can just actually like lose myself in these books and not like really reject the idea that like there's a number that I need to reach. I personally like I have this overarching goal of running 10 marathons before I'm 50, and I ran a bunch in a row, and I realized like I don't know 6 months ago I wasn't liking running, and I was becoming too obsessed with like keeping my times and that sort of thing. And so I not only have stopped running until I can feel like it's fun again, but I've also stopped like using Strava at all because I'm trying to like get back to that point where I'm like, I want to do this and I'm having fun doing it.
That's it. Yeah. The point at which you stop feeling that is the point at which you should consider whether you should be playing a different game, whether metaphorically or literally. Should you be playing a different game?
Totally. Okay. The next question is about how people new to the hobby can get more into the hobby. This comes from Anna.
Hey there, calling in as a woman who has discovered gaming as an adult. Playing a cozy game has been such a nice wind down, and it gets me off my phone. There are even cute co-op games I can play with my partner or my friends. Who knew? The game landscape is so different than when I was a kid and my brothers played endless sports and shooting games. How do I learn about new games? It's overwhelming and I don't know where to start. So far, I've just gone off of recs from friends.
Okay, so we're going to do specific game recs in a minute, but what resources would you recommend for people like Anna who are looking to find and explore new games?
So this is kind of my job as a games journalist, is to find things that are interesting for some reason. So if you read the Guardian's game section, but but the thing is, there are a lot of games websites, and they're very aimed at people who play games a lot. Yeah, and if you go to like one of the big gamer websites like IGN or Kotaku, both of which I used to work at, you're going to look at that front page and have no idea what's going on. So it can be it can feel intimidating. I really feel this, like when people are just getting into the games, especially as an adult, they want to find new stuff, but then they maybe Google it and they get just a crazy like overwhelm of recommendations. So I think a good thing to try and do is maybe read some reviews of games now and then and see if you find a critic who seems to like have your vibe or seems to have your taste and whose writing you enjoy, and maybe has maybe recommended other things. So find a critic. That's one way. Another way is TikTok or Twitch. There's an awful lot of like streamers and people who will play games for an audience, so they stream games and people watch them play. And those people are often tastemakers because, if you find a streamer who's really into, e.g. Stardew Valley, and then you see what else that person plays, that can be really useful. There's for people who like puzzle games specifically, there's an amazing website called Thinky Games that has this awesome like recommendation database. So you put in a game you've enjoyed, press enter, and it'll give you 4 more games that are kind of in that vibe, and it tells you all about them. And you can like have a look and see and you can tag like no combat, you can tag not too difficult, you can tag co-op, you can tag I want a really hard puzzle, and then it will give you like tailored recommendations. I think TikTok and Twitch can be useful for this. Finding critics to read. If you go, it's very easy to find game reviews, but if you find someone that has your taste, and then also Thinky Games and other websites like that can tailor recommendations. But also friends are really good to ask, because if you go on Reddit, I see this all the time. You look at a Reddit thread and it's like, oh hey, my pal Danny is new to games, and he's just played a little bit of Skyrim, like what should he do next? And people recommend like the most insane games. They're like, oh yeah, he should try Dark Souls, famously one of the most difficult games of all time. And it's like, no, he shouldn't. That's crazy. So you can't always trust Reddit.
This is trolling.
Or like he should play Euro Truck Simulator. It's like, really? That seems so specific.
Friends, and even like, I mean, what a great use for Instagram actually is to like just put up a story that's like, I've been playing this, I really like it, and it might also show you some people who are playing games who you didn't know were playing games, because it is not always like a public facing thing that people do.
Yeah, and like it's good that when I was growing up we had magazines, but now we've got games journalists like me, games critics, but there's also just this whole universe of people on YouTube and on social media who are kind of different sorts of game influencer. Maybe they're not critics, but they're just people who really enjoy a particular genre, or people who are very funny and enjoy games that kind of give them a chance to play off that. And it's there's a lot going on. There's a lot to find. It can be overwhelming, but you will find someone who is your vibe.
Okay, so this next section, we have people who are asking for specific recommendations because they want to hear from you. We're considering this the Ask Ann Anything segment, and it's just for paid subscribers. So if you're listening to this and you're like, wait, I want to hear this, I want in on this, head to patreon.com/culture study to become a paid subscriber and get the rest of this conversation and all of the good recommendations. This has been fantastic. I love it. You're maybe going to make me get back into gaming. Like, I didn't even say that at the top of the episode, like, but that this is part of my goal for this episode is to convince me. We have a Switch, we have all sorts of different apparatuses, like I can do it. If people want to hear more from you on the internet, where can they find you?
I write the Guardian's video games newsletter, which is called Pushing Buttons. It keeps people up to date with what's going on in the gaming world, but it's written from my perspective as a tired elder millennial with 2 children, and so I think it will probably appeal to a lot
our
of
audience.
listeners.
Yes,
To a lot of grown-up gamers. It'll appeal. And also, I'm on Blue Sky as Keza McDonald, and of course, I have written this book about Nintendo. So I'm quite easily Googleable. And I'm always really interested in writing for. I really like kind of bringing the joy of games to everyone. You know what I mean? I think like there's been too much gatekeeping in gaming for too long, so I'm always just thrilled to hear from people who are new to the hobby or like looking for recommendations.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Culture Study Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts because we have so many great episodes in the works, and I promise you don't want to miss any of them. If you want to suggest a topic, ask a question about the culture that surrounds you, or submit a question for our subscriber-only advice time segment, go to our Google form at tinyurl.com/culturestudypod or check the show notes for a link. And if you want to support the show and get bonus content, head to patreon.com/culturestudy. It's $5 a month or $50 a year, and you'll get ad-free episodes, an exclusive advice time segment, and weekly discussion threads for each episode. The Culture Study Podcast is produced by me, Anne Helen Peterson, and Melody Rowell. Our music is by Poddington Bear. You can find me on Instagram at Anne Helen Peterson, Melody at Melodious47, and the show at Culture Study Pod.